Hello. I hope you voted. I hope you're going to vote. I hope that the uh, local polling stations are going to be absolutely rammed this morning as people go out in their droves and say enough is enough. If you think enough is enough, there are a couple of you that don't, and so be it. You stick to your guns. So the children's well-being or the Education and Wellbeing Bill is being talked about again. It's the second hearing in the House of Lords today. And this really rings true for me at the minute. What are the ramifications of this? As you know, I've spoken before about VAT on education and what that means to a lot of people with children with special educational needs and disabilities. That's the D. Now that we know that the VAT on education policy doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help state schools and it doesn't help those kids that are in independent education. But a lot of them are having to move because VAT was imposed in January. And we will see what happens with the High Court case as to whether it's deemed to be contravening the European Court of Human Rights and whether kids' human rights are being violated. But in the meantime, we're having to pay 20% on fees. Now, taking away, the arguments for and against, let's look at the actual realities of that. If a family can't afford to pay that 20%, they have to put their child into the state system. Now, for a lot of these families, their children are in the independent system because state doesn't work because of their needs. And if they haven't got an EHCP, which we know is nigh on impossible to get, they go into the state system without their needs being met, if they can get a place, of course. So what a lot of people are saying is we'll homeschool them. And it's certainly something that is forefront of my mind and lots of other people's minds, which for many people is a last resort because they feel like take away education from the actual child's development. There's so many other things that they learn at school. Being with their friends, being with their peers, being part of a sports team, doing the Duke of Edinburgh Award, all of these things that go part and parcel with education. So that's often something that parents don't want to take their child away from. But then there's also the actual practical aspects of homeschooling. So it's something that you go into with a lot of thought and a lot of due diligence. Now, for a lot of children, it works perfectly. It is the absolute hybrid that they need. It's the opportunity for them to learn at their own pace in an environment that suits them and gets them through the educational system that they legally have to attend, unscathed as a human being, which I personally think it should be a basic human right. So if this bill goes through, that changes the entire platform of homeschooling because for a start, you will have to be assessed to see if you are suitable to homeschool. So what that means is you will have the local authority come round to your house, check that you're safe. Now, the reason that they're doing this, of course, is off the backdrop of the absolute horrendous tragedy that was the Sara Sharif case. Now, nobody would deny that there needs to be lessons learned from that. Nobody is denying that there needs to be lessons learned from that. But of course, a lot of people are saying, well, that has a lot to do with social services. That doesn't all stem from education. But yet here we are putting in an education and wellbeing policy that blankets everybody on the backdrop of this awful tragedy and changes the landscape for every child that may need to be home educated. So it basically disempowers parents. So where you thought you knew what was right for your child is now being questioned, and you're starting on the back foot. You're having to prove that you are safe. You're having to prove that you are capable of safely educating your child. So it's the phrase, isn't it? You are innocent unless proven guilty, whereas this is, well, you are guilty unless you can prove yourself innocent almost. You are treated instantly as a threat unless that you can prove that you're not. Now, we are talking about our own children, and the state is decreeing whether we as parents are capable, safe enough to home educate our own children. Now, this is a meaty, meaty, meaty bill, and I really recommend that if any of this applies to you, you go away and have a look at it, what it means for your rights. Go away and have a look at how they store your data and your child's data and their medical data. Go and have a look at what they can do with that information, and go and have a look at how they can force your child. So if your child can't go to school because avoidance issue, neurodiversity. Again, speaking from our own personal experience, school can sometimes be just too much. Now, we work hand in hand with our school to make sure that needs are met. But if your child is consistently absent, they will be forced into school. The local authority will have the power to force them into the establishment that they are desperately trying not to be in. And they're not trying to not be in it because they just felt like it. They're not trying to be in it because it's invoking a trauma response. So the government will have the right to be able to force your child back into the very establishment they don't want to be in. And I mean, we will do another video on this because it's a lot to take in and it's actually very, very frightening. But I would urge any parent, no matter what educational setting your child in and no matter where they are in that setting, because you never know if this could be you. And if you look at the control the state wants of our children and these policies that they're trying to bring in, this is the thin end of the wedge. Now, this isn't me being some mad conspiracy theorist. This is there for anyone to see. You can go and read the bill yourself. You can go and see what it means and do a little bit of research behind it. And it's all there to see. It's, in my opinion, frankly terrifying. My blood runs cold when I think of somebody forcing my child to go to something that traumatizes them. My blood runs cold when I think of having to justify the need for a home education to a local authority that are not educational or mental health specialists. We are talking about justifying a niche area of education and children's well-being to non-experts, to government officials. Now that, you wouldn't let a brain surgeon work on you if all they've done before is put a plaster on someone's knee. You get my drift. So I strongly recommend, if you can watch parliamentary TV, I should imagine it will be being covered on that today. I would strongly recommend that you get to know the Educational and Wellbeing Bill. Now, Bridget Phillipson has said she thinks it's disgusting that this is being opposed, and she's using that on the political backdrop of the tragedy that was Sara Sharif. And I need to be really clear. Nobody is saying that lessons didn't need to be learnt from that. Nobody was saying that was acceptable. It was not acceptable. But this bill should not be politicising the tragedy of what happened to a young girl. It should rightly and definitely be safeguarding our children. But this bill is not doing that. This bill is effectively taking away parental rights and giving them to the state. So have a look at it. Bear that in mind if you get any opportunity to have a look on parliamentary TV. There are petitions circulating. I'm sure you will be able to find them. See how you feel about it. But I think it's, as a parent, even, as I said, even if it doesn't necessarily affect you right at this moment in time, I think we should all be aware of what this means for the future, particularly in terms of medical data and the power that the state will have over your children.